So yeah, without any further ado, we'll pass it over to Huye, who can tell us all about Radical Networks.
All right. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? It's good. Working. Nice. Yeah, thanks. Great to be here with you. There's a really funny thing going on my screen. There are 2 cats and 1 child, which is like a great audience to give a talk to. So essentially, let me just get started. So this is me up here in the left corner in an inconspicuous location that none of us have ever been to, building something, which you know. But most of my burn energy goes into the Borderland, which is on the right-hand side there, a Scandinavian burn, about 2,500 participants now. And a lot of my other time goes into Edgeryders, which is the bunch of people you see standing by that pool in the bottom left corner, which is, as Namiko said, a sort of a distributed think tank. But we do also do a lot of research projects. That's not just writing a report, but actually engaging out in the world in different parts of the world, Middle East and now also Nepal. And in the bottom right there, you see a house that we've just rented. Our community in Stockholm has just got access to this 1,000 square meter house, and that's run also by me and some other people. It's called House Becoming, and it's going to be something quite interesting in the coming years. Okay, so with all of these different things, one of my most important contributions and what I've really done is I've been working on the online community building component of these things. And what I'm going to share with you a little bit today is how to think about building online engagement and really how to think about how to make our online communities as radical as our events. So let's start with this question. So why does the playa provide? It's this age-old trope that the playa provides, but why does it? And there are, of course, a lot of different reasons for that, and I won't pretend to go through them all now, but let's look at one quality from sort of the network perspective. So the Black Rock City is a very, very dense network. What does that mean? It means that from any one point that you're at, there are multiple ways and a lot of different ways to get to any other point. There are a lot of dense connections between all the different people and places and projects. And you can compare that to sort of this modernist monstrosity city by Le Corbusier on the bottom there. It's a spread out network. To get from place A to place B, there's only really one way. Everything is very effective. It's done through these hubs, so everyone goes to a hub, and from the hub, you go somewhere else. And this is often how you design networks when you think about it and you want them to be efficient. You say, well, okay, let's have all these people know that they have to go to this person or know that they have to go to this function, and from there, they'll go on further. But what I'm going to really try to convince you a little bit off in this presentation is that that's not a good way to think about networks and building communities online. How do we foster that sort of culture as we have in Black Rock City in their online communities? Let's look at this as well. What we have here is really a graph over how networks look in a workplace that is formal with hierarchies and informal and teams, and how it looks in the sort of more personal setting. And in the like hierarchical workplace setting, you have these teams, but in order to go out of your team or in order to get information from someone else's team, you usually have to go up the chain and to someone else and then down. All the decisions have to be made in that sort of chain of command. But the truth is that the person who might have the information you're looking for might be very easy to connect to, but sort of the ways to do that aren't always there because you don't have access to, you don't know what information they have necessarily. Okay, so I'm going to sort of present this little idea, and it's an idea about that there are sort of these 3 steps in building connected communities, particularly online. And these 3 steps that I'm going to talk about is that you need to increase the collision rate between talented and creative people. And you need to make sure that the connections between those people have a chance to last and grow. And finally, you need to find a way to map the paths between these people so that other people, new people, can find their way to what they need. So those are the 3 things we're going to go through: increase the collision rate, make the connections last, and map the paths. So let's look at the first one. But first, before we do that, I want to sort of back us up a little bit. And now you might be thinking we're in a different presentation, and I wouldn't, I wouldn't judge you for that. But let's go on a little detour, and we're going on a detour to the Silk Road networks in Central Asia, about more than 1,000 years ago. And there's a professor called Professor Michael Frschetti that has studied these networks. And the Silk Road was not a road. It wasn't built from place A to place B. It was a very, very dense network of roads that connected Europe to East Asia. And the thing with these networks of road is that they were much more resilient than had they been a single road. If one path sort of gets blocked off or doesn't work anymore, there's a war somewhere, you can go through multiple other paths to get to where you want. And you don't have to know that when you start out. You can sort of find out along the way, because there's always going to be this dense network to be able to walk through. So the question is, like, how do these very resilient and dense networks arise? Because they're probably not, thought Michael Frschetti, planned by someone saying, I want to make trade happen, so I'm going to build this dense network through the Central Asian highlands. That had been a hypothesis, but he thought that that's probably not right, because how does that arise? How do people plan for this? So what he thought about was sheep. Okay, this is going somewhere. I promise this is going somewhere. So what he thought about was sheep, right? Because he said that you have these sheep, and the nomads there, the sheep are their most important thing. And what they do is, in the spring, they release the sheep up into the highlands. The sheep walk around, and they go to the highland pastures where there's nice grass, and they hang out there for the summer. And then come autumn, you go and get them for the winter, because they don't want to you don't want to have them staying out during the winter. And when one flock of sheep comes and meets another flock of sheep from the other side of the mountain, because they're looking for the same pastures, when the nomads from the 2 sides of that mountain go to look for their sheep, they meet. They meet, and if you're lucky, a connection between these 2 tribes or families is formed, and they know that, hey, we're on the other side of the valley, we're on the other side of the mountain, let's know about each other so we can trade when we need to and build a little road here. So what he did was Michael Frschetti simulated digital sheep in the Central Asian highlands. And lo and behold, his simulation of digital sheep and the paths they would make to 75% overlapped with the known Silk Road networks. Okay, so where am I going with this? I'm going with this in that there's usually something quite different that forms these resilient networks than what they are then used for. So what we're talking about is we want to form these networks between people to be able to build our events, to be able to plan things together, to be able to get the things we need from each other, and to be able to distribute decision-making a little bit wider than it might be if you just do it hierarchically. So what can we use as our sheep? Well, we can argue that to increase the density of our networks at the borderland, we could say that dreams are to the borderland, what sheep are to the Silk Road. And I'm not just talking about the dreams you dream at night. What I'm talking about is how the borderland uses the word dreams. We use the word dreams instead of art. We say that whatever you want to create, whatever you want to bring to the event, that's your dream, that's the thing you want to do. And in order for you to be able to bring that thing, you need a few things. You need, placement. You need a way to fund this thing. You need people to work with you on it. You might need to check if you need to burn it with someone, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of things you need to do. But very often you also need funding. So at the Borderland, we sort of think of it like this. We want to use the dreams to increase the collision rate between people so that they start knowing about each other, and so that everyone starts knowing about what's going on at the Borderland. Okay, so what we did was we built an online platform. It's sort of like internal Kickstarter. And what it does is that you go there when you have an idea for what you want to do, and you create this little dream. You really only have to fill in the title of it, a short description. You press, you press submit. You might upload a picture, and that's all you have to do. But then you can apply for funding through our Dream Grants. We distribute a lot of funding to dreams, and you just put in your number. But then you have to jump through a few more hoops. You have to make sure it lives up to the guidelines. And in order to make sure it lives up to the guidelines, you get people who volunteer to guide you through applying for those funds. And now once all these streams have been approved to be able to apply for funds, what we do is we give every member of the Borderland 10 tokens each to distribute to the dreams that they want to see happen. One token is valued at a number of Swedish currency. And then if they reach their minimum goal, they're funded. And then they can only reach a maximum goal, just like Kickstarter. That's essentially how we fund it. And we don't do it like that primarily, to me, because of a democratic reason. To me, the main reason for having this online platform that we built is to increase the collision rate between people. Because when they go online and they look at different ideas that they could distribute their Dream Grants to, they find out about projects. So when they arrive at the Borderland, they already know about 5, 10 different things that are going to happen there. So if you're 10 people at the event in your camp, between you might know about 50 or 100 things that are happening at the Borderland because of the things you distributed your grants to. Now, this really, really increases the density of our networks. A lot of more people have a lot of more of the knowledge about what is actually going on and what exists, which means that you increase the likelihood of you, when you need something, running into someone who knows where you might find that thing. And it doesn't only increase that on site, it also increases it before, because people know that somebody's working on this and another person is working on that. Okay, so we also have, for these streams, we have a peer-guided self-placement system that essentially happens on a Google map with layers. I'm not going to show that particularly here, but essentially it's not rocket science. It's Google Maps and using the layer functionality and then having discussions while people are self-placing. If they place in the same place, you need to solve that conflict. So how does this work in practice? In 2018, we had 220 dreams created. And you see most of them are created during this short window in April. And 5,100 individual grants were given by 1,150 borderlings. And that's 46% participation. And that's very, very high. It's about the same as you will get in US midterm elections. Very bad for midterm elections in participation, but very good for crowdsourced art grant distribution. So there were 156 projects funded with a total of 110,000 euros, which is about the same in US dollars. So you see that we actually fund the majority of our projects, and that's by design. The idea isn't to just have a few grand like at Burning Man, honoraria. That's not the purpose of the thing that we are doing. The purpose of the thing that we are doing is to increase the collision rate and give everyone a chance at creating what they want to create. So a lot of these art grants are actually quite small. So Dreams is a platform that we built. That I'm going to try to. So you still follow, right, on the screen. You see that I went to Dreams now. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to load that. Dreams is a platform we started working on in 2016. Since it has been adopted by Burnerot, Midburn, Archon, Slosh and Burn, probably a few others now. I know that others have been interested in taking it on. Very early on, it got adopted by Midburn, and actually, since it was open source, they could just take the code, run with it, and now about 75% of the code base is written by the Israeli community. So it's a great example of this collaboration, and this is the Dreams platform for the Borderland last year. Okay, so that's Dreams. That's increasing collision rate. So I've talked a little bit about that, and I don't know, maybe art is not the generator of collision accelerator always. Might be different thing for different events and different communities, but it's a good thing to think about. What do you have that everyone's interested in, everyone wants to talk about, and everyone wants to do together? That's a good thing to have as an increaser of collisions online to get engagement before the event. Okay, but you don't just want to increase collisions. What you want to do is to make those connections that form, you want to make them last, so that a connection between people can grow into a friendship, a relation, and perhaps a sort of a professional relationship where they are working together on solving a problem, or might, one person might be recruited into a function like healthcare or something like that. And you want to be able to have somewhere where these collisions can actually grow into strong connections. On the Silk Road, where this happened was the caravanseries. So all across the Silk Road networks, there were these hubs, these sort of strong connection points at these very important parts of the network. And they were there to sort of fortify and make it possible to travel long distances. These hubs, these caravanseries, where you refueled, restocked, but also where the culture of the Silk Road was sort of maintained. And might I say, the collective intelligence of the Silk Road was sort of held at these caravanseries, and they were infrastructure. So what sort of digital caravanseries do we have today? We have this black hole called Facebook, and it's popular, it's easy to go to, it's often what people default to. If they're starting an event, they go, okay, let's start a Facebook group. That's fine if you're up to a set number of people, but as everyone who's been in large Facebook groups knows, eventually there will be war. It seems inevitable. Facebook has some horrible functionality, which unfortunately makes it a very bad caravansery. Facebook has attention manipulation, meaning that the thing that is getting the most affectionate sort of emotional response is the thing that people see the most. Not the most important thing or the thing that actually is a good argument, but the thing that's getting the most emotional pull. That's because Facebook wants to keep eyeballs on Facebook. Number two, you have commodification. Goes without saying, it's one of the principles. We should try to avoid to commodify our events, yet many of our event groups use Facebook. There's no overview. It's very, very difficult on Facebook to get an overview of everything that has been decided. If you try to make decisions together on Facebook, how do you tag those? How do you categorize them? How do you put them into places so that you can actually come back to them later, and new people can understand what has been decided, what has been talked about? It's very difficult. And last, there are privacy concerns. People opt out of Facebook for these reasons, and increasingly many people are jumping ship. So what would a platform have that has these sort of hallmarks of good online community practices. There are a few that make for a good digital caravansary. One is the ability to form subgroups. So if you have a group on Facebook, the only thing you can do is form a new group. But what you need to be able to do is form a subgroup within a group, for a little group within the group that is working on a problem. Two, you need to be able to collect, tag, reference, link. On Facebook, if you make a comment, there's no way for me to link to that comment. This is a really, really bad problem, because if Yorinda says something really interesting and really valuable in a comment thread, there's no way for me to point people towards that without saying, go to that. I need to write, go to that thread that is really, really far down. Look for Yorinda's comment. She talked about this. It's ridiculous. I can't link to a comment. Third, I want to be able to move conversations between groups. If somebody starts talking about something very, very interesting, but it's off topic for this group, I want to be able to move it to the right place. Three, if somebody in the middle of a thread starts talking about something that is off topic, but very interesting and important, I want to be able to take that, fork it into a new conversation, and perhaps even move it to a new group. I want conversations to be able to be long-lasting, meaning that you can actually come back to a conversation a year afterwards and be able to find it and be able to continue it with the same people. I want to be able to gather advice and make decisions. Facebook polls are horrible. I can show you statistics for why Facebook polls are horrible, but essentially what it has to do with is that the first option that gets popular, runaway wins. And it has to do with that everyone sees the most popular option gets ranked the highest, and you only see the 4 most popular options in the poll. And last, this does not have anything to do with technicality, but you need to have a strong social contract. What are our rules of engagement on this in this particular platform? What can you expect for engaging with it? What do you have to follow in order to be able to get what you need? Facebook just has that in a little piece of description. We want to be able to make that more visible. Okay, so these are a few of these hallmarks. I think I've accidentally drawn on my screen. I'm not sure how okay, there you go. Yeah. Okay, so there are a few of these. The Borderland uses Loomio. Loomio is built by this really nice collective of people in New Zealand. It's an excellent platform, especially if you want to focus on decision making. It's open source, anyone can deploy it, or you can pay them to host you. Another platform works great, and this one we use with Edgeryders is called Discourse. And Discourse is even better than Loomio for sort of long form conversations and discussions, but it's not great for decision making. So if you want to make a lot of collective decisions, Loomio is better. If you want to hold online meetings, Loomio is better. So we deployed a version of Loomio that we call Borderland Talk. It was about 14 months ago now. And we've used this very successfully over this last year. There are about 1,500 Borderlings who are members of Loomio, but of them, there are about 400 that in 2018 engaged in some significant way, gave advice, made decisions, took on responsibilities, or just interacted with something on the platform. This is quite a high percentage. What we use this platform for is not just people coming in and having opinions. It's quite structured advice and decisions being made. So essentially, it's pre-event governance. And about 16% of our participants engage in this sort of pre-event governance. So I'm going to just show you a little bit about how it looks. First, what I'm going to show you is the group that is about the new location we had. So this is how a group on Lumio looks. And we could, for example, see here that there is a thread here about input for a meeting. So here, Peter and Luciano are going to have a meeting with Tina, and they need to know, is there anything we need to know or need to bring to the meeting? Some people come in here, they comment on that, and then Peter and Luciano go to the meeting and they report back on this group as well. The way we make decisions at the Borderland is by way of something we call advice processes. It's really, anyone can make any decision as long as you ask for advice. So in this group, we collect all those decisions that have been made, and in the same group, we can sort of tag here and show that these are the decisions that are ideas and they're being discussed. These are actually proposals that are active APs that are, being debated, and advice is being sought on whether to go forward with those proposals. We have completed advice processes that have resulted in a decision, like this one about date of the registration and membership lottery 2019. And then we have policies. So policies are decisions that are decisions that affect every event going forward, as long as there is no other decision that sort of supersedes it. So we have a conflict escalation process that's been decided on. We have what's the role of the helm function. That's a policy, right? So if we go into one of these threads here, we have one that was about the number of memberships in 2019. This one, in this one, I go in and I say that, okay, my proposal is that maybe we can grow to 3,500. But in order to know if that's a good number, I need to seek advice from everyone who'd be affected by such growth. So Leave No Trace, Clown Police, Sanctuary, Working Class Heroes, Port, Helm, all these people. I tag them and I say, can you please give me advice on whether you think this is a number that we can go to? And they do. They come in here and they give advice. And once everyone has given advice, then I conclude that, all right, people seem to say that we can do 3,500, but in terms of culture, people are worried about it being diluted too much if we grow that fast. All right, so I now know what I need to know to make that decision, and the board will make that decision next week. So here I can show you something that I was talking about before, which is this thing about being able to fork a thread. Because what happened is that Willemijn in this thread, she said, like, look, 3,500, it's fine, but I want to professionalize our medical services. I don't think that doctors should work for free anymore. And what I can do then is that she makes that post inside that group. I can click fork, and her comment and all the replies to it become a new thread, which is now professional medical care, where this is being discussed, and this becomes its own advice process. If I didn't have that function, and this is why it's so important, if I didn't have that function, that discussion would be lost, or it would be annoying to the people who are talking about something else. Now that can go off and live as its own discussion with all the value that it adds, and it has added a lot of value. I need to say, these are not just opinions. The people engaging in this thread are medical professionals, are doctors, are sanctuary leads. They are making the decision here. These are not just community members with opinions. It's very, very important to distinguish that. Right, so I've shown you a little bit about the different things. One really interesting thing I also want to show you here is that there is a new burn being planned in our community in Norway, and they just decided to create their own group on Talk. They can create a group with subgroups, and now they are running their advice processes here too, and it's going great. So we've sort of supplied this as a function for the community as well, and I think 2 or 3 other burns are now being planned on the same platform by the same community. Okay, so this is sort of a little bit about making connections. Here's, by the way, this is just activity on Talk. I'll go through it pretty quickly. How it looked, we mostly there's sort of just a little bit of engagement throughout the year, and then getting closer to the event, you have a huge peak. This year, as some of you know, the Borderland lost its location. That happened here. So you see this peak here when everyone goes crazy and panics. And then here, you don't have a lot of engagement because guess what? A lot of people were out in the real world looking for options. And 5 different groups formed that self-organized to find a new location. Now, in this interim here, those 5 groups are looking around and they're posting their different proposals. And then up here, we decide to go for Hedeland. And all of this engagement is people that are adapting the plan and budget to the new location, which happens less than a month before the event. So that is all done online in a distributed manner. And you know what? The board didn't really meet. We barely met in person. All of this happened online in a distributed fashion. So that's what we use it for. The Borderland happened here, and of course, no engagement, just the way you want it. Nobody's on talk during the Borderland. Very happy about that. So that's making connections last and building these digital caravanseries. I want to get a short little part about the next thing. It's not going to be as meaty. This is more what we're working on now, because how do you find what you need? So in the Silk Road analogy again, once this network started to arise and became very important for trade, of course, somebody's going to make a map. Why? Because you don't want to just rely on always forming new connections. After a while, you know that there are some connections that are stable. You want to be able to find them. So how do we find our way to what we need? And there are sort of 2 things you can think about here. What is it that you need? Do you need to get something done? Or do you need to explore ideas, exchange experiences, share stories, and find collaborators? The types of maps you need for this are quite different. We are developing a new tool for how to get things done. It's called Realities. And what it is sort of a stakeholder mapping. We want to be able, and this is the real tool, by the way, we want to be able to understand what needs does the Borderland have. For example, diversity, consent awareness, water, parking, medical support. We want to know what responsibilities are there that are fulfilling those needs. And we want to know how do those responsibilities depend on each other. So why do we want to know all of this? And it's because, remember, anyone at the Borderland can make any decision. But what you have to do is you have to ask advice from anyone who is dependent on you. So what it then becomes is that we map out the system where everyone has the responsibility to tell you, I depend on you, and to put that into writing in the system. So you create these you create these sort of dependency links between different responsibilities and different needs, so that when I want to make a decision about the thing that I am doing, I know who I need to ask for advice, because they have told me that if you are going to do something, please ask me. So it's a map to keep track of that, and it's also sort of a digitized collective memory, letting us know how do things actually work for a new person to be able to come in and plug into it, because these red little dots, they mean that something currently does not have a person attached to it. It's a responsibility you can step into. So we're trying this out for the first time this year. It's a new tool. We'll see how it goes. It's essentially, I'm not spending as much time on it because I don't want to sell something that I don't know if it works. And next year we can come back to it and see if it worked. But we're prototyping it now. It sort of looks like this. You get these little email notifications when things happen, and eventually you can see your own profile, what you are linked to, and the other people that rely on you or are somehow related to the things that you are engaged in doing. Very, very briefly now at the end, In Edgeryders, we do something, and this goes away from the Borderland. In Edgeryders, we do something else. We map our conversations as networks. And why do we do that? We want to map out the networks of who the experts are so that we can know what to do when faced with a new challenge. And we also want to understand the concepts people are talking about in a network view. It's a little bit abstract to explain during just a short time, but essentially we built a tool where ethnographers can go in and they can tag a conversation, and they tag conversation with topics about what these things are related to. And here a lot of people have tagged, or the ethnographer has tagged many conversations with mental health and stress being mentioned together, and also mental health and art and healthcare being mentioned together. And here also creativity and mental health being mentioned together, creativity and art and healthcare, etc. So why do you do this? You do this to be able to find answers to questions you didn't know you had. And this is something that's very interesting to do when you're dealing with something as messy, as complex as Burning Man, I think, or the Borderland. Because a lot of the time, you don't know exactly what you're looking for. You don't know exactly what the question is, but you know that something around placement around this area is wonky. Like something around this area, for some reason, leads to there being a lot of more trash there than anywhere else. And it happens every year. And you're sort of not quite understanding what that is. You just know there's something. So what you can do in that case, you can hold an online conversation with people who are in that area and building their projects, and the rangers and the L&T team and all these people. And you can try to understand. You can try to get the answer to the question that you don't know quite what it is. So that's a thing we do at the border at Edgeryders. I hope maybe we can do this one day with one of our events, because I think it's fascinating and fun. So it's for my own nerdy pleasure. This is very academic. You can look at this little video in the presentation I'll share with you. But that's essentially it. I am arguing that to build good online community engagement, you increase the collision rate, and you make those connections last, and then you map out your paths. And that's it, really. That's my demonstration presentation for today. So I guess we'll move on to questions.
Great. Thank you, Huye. That was so interesting. And it already provoked a little bit of questions in the chat box. So the first one, let's see. Marco had a question about, let me just find this really quick. I think it got answered already.
Speaking from your experience, what are examples, types of decisions that have not worked well yet using this platform? That's Marco's question.
Great.
So it's not so much the platform, but the methodology that people use when trying to. So if people rely too heavily on polling, the decisions often don't work out very well. And the reason is that polling is statistically finicky. You need to get quite a lot of people to engage in order for the poll to actually say anything about reality. What you need to do is you need to go and ask people for advice, and you need to do the thinking of who do I need to go get into this thread to give me advice. And once you've gotten all those people into the thread to write their advice down, it'll be quite clear what people think. You don't need a poll. But often people are a little bit lazy, and instead of doing that work, what they do is they just start a poll and they just post it on Facebook. And so what we encourage people to do your polling on Talk, but broadcast that it's happening on Facebook, just to get people involved. So sometimes if people are lazy, they just put up a poll before having a good conversation with advice. Some people come in and answer the poll, and the result from that is usually not great. So this has more to do with that. It takes a little bit of practice to understand how to get valuable advice in, and what work you have to do as a decision maker.
Great. Thank you for that. Owl also had a question about the Dreams platform and if there's any documentation related to the decision-making process that you share or can be shared as a nonprofit or for any tax or reporting purposes.
Not sure I understand the question.
Owl, do you want to unmute yourself and ask in further detail?
Yeah, my question is basically that if you look at the Dreams platform, everything is sort of spread out and distributed over several pages. Every grant Dream has its own page. But I'm thinking about that at least in Germany, if you as a nonprofit are giving out officially art grants, then you have to document the decision process, so the tax office can be sure everything is transparent.
So the way we do it, it's a bit of a hack. So the way we do it is whenever you when you create a Dream on the Dreams platform, actually there's automatically a templated Google document that's created, a Google sheet that's copied from a specialized template, is created in a folder where all of those end up. And that's where you put your budget, and that's where you put links to all of the receipts that you buy things for. Because our art grants actually are not grants that you get beforehand, you just get compensated. So you get refunded for the expenses you make. And essentially the way it works legally is that the Borderland is actually buying all of these things and technically owns them. But that's sort of how we do it for tax purposes. So you just upload your receipts and you get refunded for your costs. And all of that happens automatically in Google Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Leo Bard from Austria also threw a question in the chat. Will the Realities platform include all features that Talk currently has, or will Realities and Talk exist in parallel?
They will exist in parallel. Realities is a stakeholding mapping tool, not a conversation tool. It's not they exist for different reasons, and one does not replace the other.
Cool. And I had a question just thinking about it's great to hear all these different tools that you guys have built out. Is there any lack in like the adoption rate, or do you feel like the community there is really all about new technology and you haven't seen any sort of lag with the adoption rate?
So the way to get people to adopt new tools is to make the tools do something that they can't live without. So the first one is Dreams. I mean, we put our art grant process in the tool. So then if you want to get a grant, you got to use the tool, and it's not that hard to use. So there people were actually, I think most people thought that this was easier than what they had to do before, which was everyone created their own spreadsheet and everyone created their own thing, and it was a bit chaotic. So with that one, we just made it easier than what existed, and then people use it. Talk, it required work. It required essentially me being really, really annoying in the Facebook group for months and months and months, explaining to people why Facebook sucks. But it helped us, paradoxically, that we had, the year before I introduced Talk, which was also the reason why I did it, had a massive Facebook war, and not just one, plenty that were just awful. And I mean, everyone was scarred from it. Everyone hated it. So people were they were primed to listen when I said that this won't happen there. And they said, why won't it happen there? It's just like, just trust me, it won't, because this is Facebook's fault. It's not our fault as a community. And it has proven to be the case, because when we've had arguments on Talk, they don't get as infected and vicious as they do on Facebook. And there are reasons for that, but yeah. So there is a little bit, and I think reality is going to be a little bit of a challenge, because it's really only relevant to quite a small percentage of people in the borderland, and maybe that will be fine. It's sort of a meta tool for organizers and people making decisions, and maybe the adoption rate doesn't have to be great for that.
So is the Borderland community, is it pretty much off of Facebook then for organizing, or no?
And this is the thing. Facebook can be fantastic and wonderful if you use it for the right things. We have a Facebook group of about 12,000 members, and it's great, and there's a great atmosphere in there. But what it's used for is, one, essentially broadcasting. When there's a newsletter, when there are new things happening on Talk, when the information has to get out, it gets broadcasted in the Facebook group. Number two, social feature. So people say, hey, these are some pictures I took, or here was this great thing that happened at the Borderland. I just want to reminisce about it a little bit. Or here are these Borderland related memes. Great for people to sort of stay in touch with each other, but not to make decisions and not to do anything that's sort of like serious or requires thinking or long form conversation.
Great. Does anyone on the phone have questions that you want to ask that you're not able to type into the chat box? Feel free to unmute yourself if you do.
May I make a comment?
Mm-hmm.
I'm Nicholas Oscarsson. I'm organizing the Nordic Camp a little bit. I was camp lead last year, and I'm advocating for moving from Slack to Talk as a platform for the camp. Camp is 120 persons, and it's going to be much easier to form the camp and hold it together as we're scattered over the whole world, but with a center to the Nordic countries. And I think it's a great tool even for that kind of process, not only for organizing full-scale events, but also to organize smaller camps. And I'd love to see a platform where you can actually log in and just create a new camp and get access to all the Talk functions and in your own subgroup. That would be an amazing progress, and I encourage Burning Man to investigate that possibility. And thank you, Hui, for making this it's really a great tool for Borderland.
Thank you, Nicholas, for being awesome.
We have a question from Dale from Taiwan. Dale said, any advice for efficiently translating online content for less digitally active community members, or efficiently encouraging continued engagement in decision making?
Yeah, so a good feature that Lumio has, which is what we run Talk on, is weekly summaries. So as long as members have email, if they just go in and become members of the groups that they're interested in, they will get weekly summary emails. And I've actually heard that there are quite a lot of people who keep up with it that way. They don't go in and engage, but the fact that they get these weekly summaries mean that they have the information and they know what's going on.
Great.
There's transparency.
Yeah. And question from Tristan. Tristan, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, hi everyone. I would like to, I think this is amazing. Thank you, Hui. And how can I roll this out into the community? Where can I send you an email and we talk again, then one can distribute this as a tool in various burner communities and regions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I do get this question sometimes. I would love to help. the challenge is this. So what you need is people that are essentially you need people with some programming skills, or some system administrative skills to do it, and I can guide them, but my challenge is really my own time. I'm sort of I don't. It does take some time. So I'm sort of trying to figure out how I can do it efficiently, to be able to help to roll this out in more places. I certainly would want to.
One suggestion I have, this is Meg's, is there could be a kind of group onboarding if you had enough potential regions with interest.
Yes, there could be, absolutely, and a group of people helping each other to do it, and so forth. Some of it is going to be like practical, technical questions. Other things are going to be best practices. But do get in touch, and I'll try to see what we can do.
Great. We also have a question from Leo Bard. Leo, do you want to unmute yourself?
Hi, this is Leo. Hugi, we know each other from emailing and RDF stupidity. I jokingly talked with board members of Austria this weekend about a meme that is coming up in the Austria organization again and again. We are organizing 2 events, a summer burn and a decom. And we always have the problem that people buy tickets, but they don't sign up for the volunteer forms, they don't sign up for art, participation, etc. So just to wrap some numbers, currently we have like 170 tickets sold for a decom. It's at the beginning of the sales cycle, and only like 20 people signed up for volunteer stuff. So, but we're sending out actively emails to everyone saying, please sign up to this form so that we know what you're interested to participate. And our in joke is always to say, well, we should only sell them the ticket once they have joined talk, so to say, and also expressed their participation. So we're thinking about, would it be somehow possible, or would there be a way to force the people to join the conversation, join these online forums that are more participatory compared to Facebook, express what they could contribute, get into this discussion before they buy a ticket? And I would like to know your opinion about this.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly can. I think, so at the Borderland, what we do is you sign up with a profile, and in your profile you put down what different things you might be interested in helping out with. So it's not an obligation. It's not signing up. It's just says like you might be interested in these things, and what happens is that then we get a list of emails, and quite a lot of people are willing to check a box. To say, well, I might do, volunteer to do this, or I might volunteer to do that. And then you can reach out to them directly. All the ones that tick that box and say, hey, you tick that box. It's great to know that you are interested in this. This is how you actually do it, and prod them a little bit. The second, I don't know why the Scandinavian events don't have this problem to as large an extent as some others seem to have. I don't know. It might be something in the cultural thing. We don't call it.
It's cultural, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, we don't call it memberships, for example, but if it was only cultural in terms of the people being from a different culture, then you would see lower engagement rates in our non-Scandinavian participants, and we don't. We have a lot of Israelis engaging and doing a lot of volunteering, and we have a lot of English engaging in a lot of volunteering. So it might be something with the community culture. I don't know. It's someone will have to do an ethnography to understand this.
Great, thank you. I think Olivier, Olivier's next in the queue. Olivier, do you want to unmute yourself? I can also ask it. Olivia would like a little more detail about the kind of people needed. What exact kind of tech skills do they need so they can source the right volunteer to help with setup?
Yeah, if they want to set up Dreams, they need someone who knows Ruby on Rails and preferably knows how to deploy on Heroku. Everyone else who doesn't, this is Greek, but it will only take a second. For Talk or Lumio, you deploy it with Docker Compose. It's also a Ruby on Rails app. You set up a virtual machine server and you deploy it there. That's the kind of stuff you need to know.
I'm sure that would make sense to some people on here. Buddha also had another question, looking for advice for implementation of this type of structure within their own community, or any helpful hints you have for how to move away from Facebook and get the ball rolling towards Dreams.
Yeah, okay, so Dreams is something you can do great with Facebook. I mean, the Dreams is not a replacement for Facebook, but Lumio is. So if I were to answer that question, what you do is you start with getting some core group, some function to exclusively use the new platform. So for example, the board or your healthcare volunteers or some group that has enough pull and that everyone respects enough and wants to sort of be in on the decisions of. And then you tell people, okay, this group is now making all of its decisions here. It's open, it's transparent. You can just go look at it. A really interesting thing about these platforms, by the way, is that you don't have to use your real name. You can use your burner name, which means that it's much easier than to have it transparent. Because if people don't want, someone to know blah, 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 they're engaging in these events, that's fine. They're using their burner name on the platform. So you can have things quite open. And then you just point people towards the platform. You say, go join the conversation there if you want to be in on the decision. And I use Facebook as a broadcasting platform. So I make a screenshot of some part of the conversation, might be a comment or a picture or something that's happening on Talk. I make a screenshot of it, and I post that screenshot on Facebook with just a clatchy title and then the link straight underneath it, and then some information about what's going on. And then I always write, like, don't engage with this in the comments here. Go there, engage with it there. You can sign up in a second. So use Facebook. Use what it's great at, which is reaching a lot of people in order to sort of bait people into the other place.
Great advice. Thank you. We have Jaya next up in the queue, then it'll be Markle, then Tristan. Go ahead, Jaya.
Hey, thanks for the excellent presentation. I really felt like you captured what's wrong and what the shortcomings of Facebook are. We've had, anyone who was at the last GLC in Oakland, we had Gary Lee come down from Vancouver, who created a platform called Burner Connect, which has been pretty successful getting our local organizing crew connected and in on decision-making tools on that platform. Just because of the coherence of your talk, I wanted to make sure it would be fine to share this talk with him once the recording is released, and also connect the two of you to talk more, just because there seems to be a lot of overlap in what you're trying to create. And thank you for an excellent presentation.
Thank you. I'd love to connect, so please do.
Okay, will do. Thanks.
Thanks, Jaya. We have Markle from the tech team here at Burning Man with a question. Markle, are you still on? Do you want to go ahead and ask?
Yes. Hi. Thank you for the great presentation and great work. I'm curious, and sorry if you've answered this already, but what does Dreams look like when, in reality, some decisions are made in person, or Slack, for example, does someone take on the responsibility of retroactively recording that in Dreams? Or, what does that look like? Who gives or receives the responsibility of recording decision and whatever the subcomponents of a decision are into Dreams, so that you have that that information for posterity?
Yeah. So to begin with, this doesn't really matter, but just for reference. So Dreams is our art granting platform. That's where people upload their dreams for the project. But the discussion platform where we record decisions, that's Talk, which runs on a thing called Lumio. Okay, so to your question, yes. So sometimes decisions are made in a board meeting, or they might be made somewhere else. Really, if they are just small decisions that don't impact a lot of other people, maybe they don't have to be recorded. A lot of the time they aren't, and that's fine. But if they are decisions that will impact other people and that other people have to know about, for example, we're changing the budget, or we're changing what we're doing with water, and if it's not happening at the event, then usually what happens is that either people go into the existing decision thread about that thing, like the budget, and they update it, and they notify everyone who's been engaging in that thread that, listen, I've updated it, I did it for this and this reason, I've sought advice from this and that person, it's done. Or you start a new thread and you say that this decision has already been made, this is the advice I sought, this is the decision that's been made. And you can definitely do that, but actually most of the time what has happened is that people, when they've had such a process and they essentially make a decision, what they do is they put it up as a proposal, but they put it up as a proposal where they already make a case very clearly for it and say that these are the people that support it and this is why we want to do it. And they know that, okay, unless there's like something they haven't thought of at all, you can pretty much just consider it the decision made. And then you give it a few days and then you just close it and say, okay, it's made. Yeah.
You got a thumbs up from Mark there. Tristan, you're next in the queue. Do you want to unmute yourself regarding participation rates?
Yes, I was just yesterday or two days ago watching some TED Talks. And one of the gentlemen on Playa, at TEDx on Playa, said, what we do in our cultures, we give people permission to participate. And in terms of the participation rate, the volunteer rate, I think is often, I do burn in South Africa, I burn in Spain, I burn in different places, and people have different attitudes in different cultures, and I think a lot of it revolves around permission. People are either afraid to ask permission, or they haven't been given express permission to engage something, so that they can self-actualize themselves. And I think that's, if people can't see that they can self-actualize themselves through getting involved, that's when you don't get turnout, that's when you don't get help.
So I think there's an implicit question there, which, but if I'm not mistaken, and I'd like to just show you how our advice processes part looks here. What it says, just to read it, this is the group in which our decisions are made, categorized, and recorded. So the Borderland essentially organizes itself using two processes, dream prototyping and consensual democracy. And then it goes down here. The short version, this is usually enough. The general principle is that anyone should be able to make any decision regarding the Borderland. The permission is there explicitly, but then it says, however, before you make a decision, you must ask advice from those who will be impacted by the decision and those who are experts on the subject. And there is also, when this is very important, in order to be able to make this work, what happens if there's conflict? What happens if one person makes a decision, now there says, I do not accept this decision. Then there is a conflict escalation process, which is written down. And the last resort of that is that the board makes the decision. But that is the last resort. So when it comes to permission, yes, permission is important, but what is also important is that everyone feels like they're playing by the same rules. Everyone feels like there isn't stuff going on, or at least there isn't too much stuff that's going on somewhere else, so I don't have the information required. You need to make explicit the information, and there's another part of that which is also about permission. It's not just about permission; it's also about agency. You need to give people agency, and the way you do that is that you work out loud. Working out loud is writing down and documenting what you're doing, and making sure that it's not implicit but explicit. And by doing that, and also by explicitly giving permission, you can get participation. And we actually just now, our number of participants and our date of registration and how the registration happens was just decided by someone who's not on the board. In fact, someone who I've never met. And most of the board have never met.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question, which Buddha just put into the chat. That if Dreams is used by many different regions, would it be possible for a central Dreams environment with regions having their own area for use/input?
Yes, there would. It's really just a matter of time and effort to code it such. That's not a trivial project, but it can most certainly be done. I want to do it, or rather this way, I'm not the person who does most of the coding. I do some coding, but I rely on great coders wanting to step up and do this. I don't see it happening unless there's funding. I think someone would have to come in and say, look, we're going to fund this with X amount, and we'd have a little development project and make it happen. If that happened, then absolutely. It wouldn't be that hard. I think, yeah, that we'd have to draw up the architecture and just make it happen.
Mm-hmm. And sorry if I missed this, is Dreams currently being used by any other regions?
Yes, so Dreams is being used by Midburn. It's being used by the other Israeli Bernerot. It's being used by the Austrian Blossenburn. It's being used by the Netherlands ArtJump. It is now going to be used by, I think it's going to be used by Where the Sheep Sleep. And then it's being used by a lot of different Scandinavian burns, and it's been used in 2 non-burner events that have been like art festivals. Yep, so it's seen a lot of use for sure.
Great. Thank you. Keeping an eye on time here. I think we're just about at time. So if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead, throw it in the chat, and we can get it to Huye at a different point. But thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge and experience with all of us. Thank you, everyone calling in from around the world at different odd times. It's great to be here and learn with all of you.
Thank all of you for coming. It was fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We'll go ahead and share this recording, and thank you, Iris, for taking notes. For us visual learners, we can share the notes as well.
Yeah, and feel free to my email has been up there now for a long time, so I hope some of you have taken it down, and feel free to reach out. And also, if you want to look at how Talk works, it is open. Very, very few of our conversations are behind any sort of lock. You can go to talk.theborderland.se. You can look at it without being signed up. Then you go to /explore, and you can go to the groups. But honestly, just sign up, and it takes 2 seconds, and go browse around. You're most welcome.
Great, thank you. We'll put the link in the notes as well.
Excellent.
All right, have a good afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you guys are in the world. Thank you so much, Huye. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. All right. I hope to see you guys soon.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Cheers.